Mm.
Oui, après, il a aussi des photos encore. T'as on va tout en prendre.
Photo encore, oui, oui, c'est vrai.
Good morning. I see we're all still wandering around, hein? Comment nous sentons-nous ce matin après la belle promenade d'hier? Oui, s'il vous plaît, s'il vous plaît. Nous allons commencer bientôt cette dernière journée. Nous faisons bonjour mes amis, technique. Nous faisons encore juste quelques aménagements. Alors, nous allons changer un peu le programme, en particulier pour tenir compte de la disponibilité de nos collègues de GCF qui vont faire une présentation sur l'accréditation. Alors, plutôt que de commencer avec ça le matin, nous mettrons cette partie-là dans l'après-midi pour avoir leur contribution. Vous vous souvenez aussi qu'hier, nous n'avions, parce que les discussions étaient tellement intéressantes sur la readiness, grâce à Monsieur Agrignan qui nous avait dirigé là-dessus, nous n'avions pas dit.
We didn't talk about the accreditation approach. Okay, PSA. So we're going to start with this today, and after that, we're going to get into some of the considerations, strategical considerations, with the assistance of our colleague, Mr. Kofi Kumasi, and our colleague, Awal Idris. And so this will lead us to the end of this part. And in the afternoon, we will have the parts of accreditation with the presentation by the colleagues of GCF. So the day will be very full, and we expect and we assure that this is also be a very engaging group day, and we expect a contribution of everyone. Just to give an overview of what will be done today, we're going to try to take some minutes at the end to compare what we have achieved regarding the expectations that we have. You remember that the first day that we made a round of table, everybody expressed what were the expectations. And this will be very important to see if you have realized this importance or not, these expectations or not. So this will give an idea on what we're going to have today. So let's give us some few minutes, some patience, and we'll start very soon. Thank you. Sister, do you have a question for me? No, it's okay? Oh, okay, fine. No, no worry. So we're going to start in some few minutes. Thank you very much.
Aujourd'hui, c'est particulièrement important. Mais
Ça va aller, ça veut dire qu'on finit à l'heure.
C'est ça, par contre, docteur Kamaye. Hein? Mais on va essayer, OK? On va essayer. Aux gens, OK. Docteur Kamaye dit qu'on va faire attention au truc. Je vais vérifier que ta présentation est...
But you know, oh, you have time. I just want to make sure. I tell you after the presentation. That's perfect. We can just try quickly after the my presentation and so. Okay. But no, I think another.
Non, la présentation est prête, ça, non? Oui, oui. Je viens d'y aller. Elle est prête. Donc, tu me dis quand tu veux commencer. Tu es prête? OK, fantastique. Et j'ai l'impression que tu parles. Okay, thank you very much. Good morning again to each and every one of us. So yesterday's outing and the day yesterday. So as I was mentioning a few minutes ago, today we have reached, unfortunately, the last day of this forum. But it has been very enriching so far, and we want to make sure that the last day is just as productive as the first two were. After having on the first day set up the basis, gotten some updates on policies, on the second day, after having seen what is it that can be done to strengthen the agreements between the various countries and the GCF through the use of the revised readiness program, today we will start by considering a couple of aspects of this new initiative that's called the project-specific accreditation approach, and then engage into discussion at the strategic level, both with the strategic approach to accreditation, but also more generally issues of, excuse me, planning and strategies for country and at a regional level. And then we will have at the end a presentation by Green Climate Fund on the progress on issues of accreditation from their end. So that is what we're looking for today as far as the program is concerned. And we will try to take a few minutes for us to be able to get an early gauging of whether we've reached the objectives that we had at the beginning of the forum. So that's what we have. We will try and keep a better tab on time today, and we're hoping that the gods of technology will help us. And Sandra will be our first speaker today. She will give us some highlights and insights on the project-specific accreditation. So sur ce, Sandra.
So on this note, Sandra, you are invited to take over, and merci beaucoup. Thank you so much. I want to be here because the screen is more accessible to me here. We're going to talk about the new modality of funding put into place by the GCF, project-specific approach. We're going to talk about the context and the strategical framework of the PSA, as we call it, the eligibility criteria, and the way, as a country, we could make a good use of this modality of finance funding. So, the need to bring in a new modality as the PSA came from many complaints that the accreditation, which was the only modality requirements to mobilize resources of GCF, the accreditation was long. It was a long process, and it was a queue of many entities applying who could not have access to the GCF. At the time, GCF had about 100 accredited entities, while the demand and the pressure to have access to the GCF was becoming enormous. So the GCF clarified that the accreditation was not the only requirements to have access to its resources. And it wanted to diversify through the PSC the means to have access to the finance of the GCF outside beside the channel of accreditation. So if you look on this on the screen, you see here represented a number of channels or ways to be partnership of the GCF in the at the north. In the middle of which you have GCF, you have the standard channel, which is the accredited entity. The role of the accredited entity is actually to manage projects for the GCF. The accredited entities work as agents of the GCF. And more, apart from the accredited entities, we have the execution entities. These are the concept owners. Because they don't have access to the GCF, they use the accredited entities to have access, but they are the one to implement the project. And then you have the partners of implementation of the readiness, who help countries to have access to the funding funds of readiness, which are the preparatory funding, the capacity building, the putting into place of the strategic framework, the pipelines approach. This readiness that we've spoken about yesterday a lot. Today, $7 billions of dollars put into place for countries from 2024 to 2027. At that time, you have partners for readiness. So it's another way of access to the GCF. Apart from that, partners of the of the project of GCF. The difference between the two is that the co-funding partner engages its resources, which is considered as necessary for the achievement of the project of GCF. So the co-founder is directly integrated in the legal form of the implementation of the project. So if the co-founder doesn't disburse its resources, the GCF does not do either. So the other partner has to strengthen the project of DCF, but the project of DCF is not dependent. They are helping each other, but they are not indispensable for the achievements of the project of the DCF. So this will tell you that we may not be an accredited entity. We may be an execution entity. You can be co-partner, funding co-partner, parallel partner for GCF. And apart from that, today we can be an entity for the PSA. So what is this new dispositions for the PSA, which is the PSA? So the PSA today is a parallel way or channel regarding the channel of the accreditation. So on the panel of which is up, we have the accreditation. You see that there are 3 steps. It is, if you want to have access to the resource of GCF, you need to go through accreditation, follow the review of secretariat, and also wait for the review of the panel of accreditation, and the council board should approve your accreditation. And after this accreditation and the finalization of the agreements, legal agreements that we call the AMA, so the AMA, you are ready to develop project proposals for the GCF for their implementation. So it is a way of 3 steps away: accreditation, project development, and then that's the first panel. The PSA has brought a new dynamic strategic approach, which tries to combine at the same time the assessments, institutional assessments, and the project assessments simultaneously at the same time. It combines in a way the 2 first phases of the accreditation. You were not an accredited entity before. You are an entity that once mobilized the resources of GCF for a unique project, and you have to be submitted to a very fast assessment. Once your project is evaluated, your entity as well is assessed. And so GCF has combined these 2 approaches. Once the approval received for the additional agreement and agreement on the project, you are ready to start the project, the implementation project. So that is what the GCF want to do with the PSA. The GCF has engaged from 2024 to steer 10 PSA by year. The first PSA, we're going to talk about it very soon. These have been approved at the council board in July. You have the visibility that 2 other PSA might be approved in October. And so you see that for the first year, 2024, of experimentation on the objective of 10, the GCF could maximum submit only 3 PSA to the consideration of the board, of the administration board. So as always for the GCF, the first years are complex. That's why I like saying that it is in this phase that you have to take advantage. It is when we are steering, piloting, that you should take advantage. The first that come, those who come first in this phase are rated with more flexibility, because where the GCF is right now, it want to show that CSA can be a success. So if they were to have more years, they will have made it easier for the approval. So generally, I've had occasion to say to countries, we are waiting to come when the first experiences have been made, when we understand the limits, and when they reinforce the system, when it becomes more difficult, that's the time that we come in. We should be proactive. That's why we want to talk about it in this workshop. So the decision adopted the PSA has been approved since the 31st Administration Board Assembly. They need to do evaluation of the entities, ensure that these entities respect the standards of accreditation of the GCF, and are capable of implementing the program submitted. The GCF decided to do a sharing period of 3 years, which started in February 2023 to 2027. 6. So as I was telling you, the framework taken the whole of the year 2023, it's only in 2024 that they started. So 2023, 2024, 2024, accredited entity, you can only submit one project. The PSA is not stopping you from going on with the way of accreditation, on the way of the accreditation. The PSA and the accreditation are not mutually exclusive, because the time you are working on your accreditation, you could test your capacity to program with the GCF by doing the PCF, PCA, PSA. It may be complex, but I think it's an excellent exercise, and that helps you to save time and to have access to the resources of the GCF, even if the accreditation takes a lot of time. But while you wait for your accreditation, you cannot do more than one to present more than one project in the PSA approach. So as I said it, the Secretariat indicated that they will evaluate 10 proposals of the PSA every year. So the PSA helps to broaden the scope of the channel of accreditation. We know the framework for accreditation. We are living the framework of accreditation and access. Broaden the access to the finance of GCF, working with other new partners in countries, partners that are capable of completing the partners of accreditations by bringing in new things on different dimensions, technological innovations, finance innovations, give more access to countries who didn't have access to GCF, give more access to entities, local entities who were excluded from GCF, give more access to national entities that have difficulties with the accreditation. That's what the intention of the PSA. How we can broaden the access and do in such a way that the accreditation shouldn't be a handicap, a hinder to the resources of GCF. But it's very important to know that an entity which pretends to the PSA has to always demonstrate capacities management of CDCR required from the accredited entities. You are not in the pipeline of accreditation, but you have to show your aptitude to manage the resources of GCF. You have to show you are capable of managing the risk, environment risk, policy of anti laundering, fight against laundering, fight against financing or funding of terrorism. All of these things you have to be able to demonstrate. That's why the PSA will do this evaluation of your institutional capacity and see your systems, look at your policies, see your procedures, and ensure that these policies allow you to manage the projects of the GCF. So what the PSA will also look at is your background in matter of management of projects. Have you, in your background, have you been able to put into place projects, implement projects of the types that you send into the GCF? That's it. So at the GCF, you don't innovate. You don't do with the GCF what you have never done in your life. No. You have to show to the GCF that you've had experience in this, you know how to do it. So these entities have to also show their know-how and this track record to manage projects. To be able to manage the associated environment risk, to be able to use tools of funding to follow the modalities that the GCF has regarding this project. You have to show that you are capable of managing all this and other evaluation, your institutional capacity in general. Now let's come back to the projects. So what type of institution and what type of projects the GCF is looking for or wants to attract through the PSA? Once again, for the accreditation, the PSA is open to entities, may they be private, public, non-governmental, national, subnational, regional, or international. PSA also has targets to attract a certain number of entities that have already applied for proposals of GCF who have not been able to make their project move because no accredited entity was ready to collaborate with them to mobilize these resources. To remind you this, the GCF initiated call for proposal page for the planet, where the GCF invited actors of private sector to propose ambitious projects for the funding and maybe to boost the collaboration between the GCF private sector. Pitch for Planet has attracted more than 350 actors of the private sector who propose idea notes for the GCF. Right now, Pitch for Planet, it has been 4 years since, but only 3 projects of the 350 notes have been approved by the GCF. So there are many entities who made the effort, but who haven't seen their project advanced. So the PSA has been proposed to encourage these entities to apply. If these projects are still viable, they can bring it into the GCF without waiting them to bring it to accredited entities. It's not only the LSP for Pitch for Planets, but also the other SP, LFP. They also do some LFP on micro enterprise and minor enterprise. Some micro enterprise didn't find entity to carry them. So the PSA is open to this project so that they can bring in put aside for the climate change finance entities that have never found accredited entities to take them to GCF benefit from the funding. So today they can use the window of PSA to get this. One of the difficulties with the enhanced direct entity, the direct access, is that accredited entities who are applying for this were supposed to have a particular modality which is called grant award. Generally, we confuse the grants with the grant award. We have entities that say, banks that say, we wanted to have the grant award, but the GCF say you shouldn't have the grant, you can't have the grant award. Yeah, you can't have the grant award because the grant award is to share the grant. And a bank does not distribute grants. People think that when you talk about grant awards, is the management of the grant. No, the management of the grant by the GCF is confirmed once you have the modality affinity project management. If you are capable of managing project management, you can have a grant as a technical assistance. But the grant award is something very specific. It is a modality through which you take the grant of the GCF and you yourself, you have put into place policies to redistribute this grant to other entities. And direct access entities have to be executed by entities who have that. These are the who are doing the microfinance funding to the NGOs who had the habit to distribute grant to the NGOs or resources to the local authorities. So you have these grants out to be able to grant it to other grantees, those who are eligible for these grants. And this they will support you by the technical assistance. So there's also an LSP. There was also an LSP. An LSP as an enhanced direct access, and many entities didn't bring their project to the GCF, and the PSA has been the PSA is available for these entities at the local level to mobilize resources. The level of PSA. What I want to stress on here is that, frankly, for the GCF, all the entities, whatever your positioning, international position, regional, national, sub-regional, or local, the GCF doesn't make any restriction. Generally, you have constraints of access, but it's not the GCF that pulls the restriction. The GCF is open to every. The only thing that can happen is that an institution might not meet the requirements. That is the constraints. But the GCF does not put any restriction of any type of institution to have access to the resources. That's why we need to work a lot on the capacity in a general way. One very important is for the GCF, for the accreditation for the PSA is to have a legal personality. And that is very important. That is as important. There have been cases of coordination at the national level that were proposed, and they've moved to a certain step to realize that they don't have a legal personality of their own. It is true that these are institutions that exist and which call consultation, which are operating, but you need to identify the legal capacity and the legal capacity to engage in a contract with the GCF. And many projects at the end have been rejected because the entity that was proposing have that capacity, legal capacity, because they have to be legally registered in the country and with document proving that in the country. Okay, it's not an entity that owes his legal personality to another entity. And if that is the case, then it's a mother entity that should be presented. So if you want to use any entity, it should have a legal personality. Okay, it works for the petition, and it's also for the SA. So as we always see it, the entities have to be able to show their capacity to meet all the requirements that should be, as in the case of accreditation, included the requirement on the finance management, on the implementation of the policy regarding the protection of environment and the social safeguards. So the entity should also show a background or track record in the context of their own mandates, national mandates in the domain that are covered by the GCF. So what does it mean? This simply means that the entity needs to show somewhere that in East Monday, it has a mandate to work on climate issues on the sectors that are pertinent for the climate change. That is very important to avoid some forms of greenwashing, because in your mandates, in your background tracking record, are there some alignments with the priorities of the GCF, with the mandate of GCF, of the objectives of GCF, the domain of result of GCF, the 8 domains of result of GCF, and also in terms of management of the safeguards and the risk. The risks, they are generally environmental. Of course, and with the other entities that will come from local authorities based in the developing countries, they should also receive a letter of non-objection from the project that they are bringing to the GCF for funding. So once again, what the GCF has as vision is to broaden the access. But as we say in this case of GCF, the main role, key role of the NGAs is still fundamental to the decision of the PSA, the deliverance of the non-objection letters for the project that is proposed. So what type of projects is eligible for the PSA? If you see in this project, it's the same project for the accreditation. There's no difference. The same, the main size of projects where the standard forms of the GCF are applied between $0 and $10 million. That's macro. Small, between $10 and $50 million. Average, between 50 and 250 millions of dollars. Large, between 250 millions of dollars. So these are what we use for the accreditation before. What types of funding? The same as projects that come through the standard form of accreditation. Grant, loan, capital. The same thing to show their pertinence and their appropriate character for the projects submitted. What types of environmental risk? What type of environmental risk you have here? One deviation regarding the project of accreditation, because in the case of the PSA, the GCF doesn't admit projects which has a high risk for environment. You have project of category A and E1. These are projects that admit larger risks of environment, resettlement, deforestation, and for a large proportion of forests. These types of risk A1 and E2, E1 are not part of the PSA. It doesn't allow it. So the PSA, the C category 0. Okay, so B or E2. The risks, environmental risks that will be put into the environmental management. So the only difference between the PSA and the accreditation projects is, say, in the risk management. Projects of category A are excluded from the PSA. All the rest are in the place. So this is a process of the application. The first thing that you can do if you want to submit an entity that is interested to submit projects at the title of PSA, you need to go on the site of website at the entrance dedicated to the PSA. Then you will see questionnaires that are there. You fill the forms, and the GCF secretary will make a review of these questionnaires and inform you on your eligibility. the questionnaire is very simple, extremely simple. From my point of view, it goes through the fundamentals, the legal personality, if it is confirmed, the management of environmental risk, policies, the idea of the project idea that you brought, and who is going to work with you. These are review questions. Once your eligibility is confirmed, the GCF invites you to submit a concept note as a PSA, and concept note is mandatory, which will be revised at the climate study, who give you an opinion on the interest of GCF to consider this project idea. If the CNC give you its approval, then you go to the development of the projects with the whole of the annexes. You have the same annexes as in the case of a project, classical project of the GCF, and an additional annex, and one additional annex. Who can guess what could be this annex? Who can guess? You have the same annexes. It's an additional annex. What will be this annex? Who can guess? We'll give something to this person who tell us which additional annex can be added. There is a gift for the person who find it, who guess it.
Devinez l'annexe supplémentaire.
The same annexes, but almost 22 that you have in the framework of a classical project, but it will add an additional annex. As you are not accredited, how will it be? There should be an additional annex. What will it be? No, the accreditation application. But which annex? Use the microphone, please. No, AMAC is for accreditation, so no. There's an additional annex that will be added. It's not an FMCA. It's not called FMCA. You are in the right direction, but we don't call it FMCA. But it is something which looks like a FMCA, okay, which is an additional evaluation. As you have not been accredited, the GCF will carry out an additional evaluation assessment to you, which will confirm effectively that you could do this work. So when we presented the tracks, go back to the presentation. When we presented the two tracks, the panel of the first panel, the panel above, and the panel under. Let's go back to it. Again, back. Yeah. Did you see here? So we are doing two things at the same time with the GCF. We are doing in the panel of okay, downstairs, down one, and the evaluation of the project and the evaluation. So in addition to all this, there is an additional evaluation that is done. So you have to have this additional annex for the additional evaluation if you are a candidate to a PSA. Let's go to the other slides. So here, so if you do the capacity checking, you have done the project track record. Then there's an annex that should be added. It should be considered, which testifies So after this, the whole of the file and included the institutional evaluation annex will follow the same stages as the classic approach. You go to the committee of GCF, you go to the step of independent evaluation with ITAM, and if you have the approval of the general secretary and the ITAP approval, then you will be recommended to the administration board who approve of the project. So the difference here is that you can get three differences regarding the classic mode, what we call the PAP, the project approval process. The PAP is the classic way, and the PSA, you don't need accreditation. You can go directly for one project, only one project. Excluded projects of high risk, environment high risk, all the others are accepted. And the document will be provided. Additional to what you've done, you need also your institutional evaluation to add, which confirms your eligibility for the PSA. That's the major difference between the two. And the GCF has done it with the intention to enlarge, broaden the access to entities that have not been accredited yet, either because there's a blockage in the great pipeline of the accreditation through many entities, and easy to pass on. You have priority projects, you have a shortcut, you can use the PSA, a unique project. So that's why the partnership PSA can be a strategic partnership for countries. If you really have an urgent project at the level of country, which is not with an institution that is who has the track records, you could accelerate the funding and the implementation of the projects. For this, you need this entity which has the capacity and the track record in terms of funding management and project management. In collaboration with the NGA and with the GCF, it's possible to make this project move. In the decision adopting the PSA, the GCF said that in the first years, the GCF will give priority to the positions of subnational entities, national entities, and the regional entities based in the countries in developing countries, particularly developing countries who have never had access to projects approved by the GCF at the time the PSA has been adopted. First year, the implementation of the PSA, the GCF will give priority to entities, subnational entities, national entities, and regional entities based in the countries, in developing countries, especially these countries, who have never had access to project as approved by the GCF at the time the PSA has been adopted. Second priority, entities that have responded to the cost proposal of the GSF in the case of which for planets, of which we spoke. Okay, the LSP and direct access, enhanced direct access. This cost proposal have been launched by the GSF. It got proposals for entities that were not accredited, and these entities were invited to get accredited entities to carry the project ahead, but this entity could not get to positive results. So all these projects were there lagging, hanging. Okay, they can propose this projects to the PSA now. As I told you, at the administration board, past administration board, the GCF has approved the first PSA. Do you think that this priority has been respected? Do you think that this prioritization has been respected? The entity that brought the project, was it a subnational entity, national entity based in a developing country, particularly a country who have never had a project of GCF approved? Do you think that this You think that this has been respected, the requirements? Who think that it has been respected? Is it not Agra? Is it not Agra? No, it's not Agra. It's not yet Agra. Who think that this prioritization has not been respected or has been respected? Who think that it has not been respected? Who think that the prioritization has not been respected? It has not been respected in this case because every time GCF does something to make life easier for entities like that, these entities are not space enough. So it's other entities that get benefit from this, take advantage of this situation, this proposal. And this, if you really follow the board, people have raised against it, that is not the entity that we were expecting. NGOs reacted, but they were the ones that were ready at that time. So once again, the proactivity issue, the issue of reacting very fast to the change of the policies of the GCF. When the GCF introduces a new policy appropriate to own this policy and to be the first is very fundamental. That's what we are trying to do through this forum. We are improving, but these are things that you need to master as fast as possible. The entity we are going to talk about it, we will see the entity that has been approved for the first proposal, and we have the idea on the two entities that are coming apart from Agra, which you have mentioned. I don't know whether Agra respects the requirements. I'm not sure. That is not the entity that we are waiting for. The two potential entities that should get on the board that do not respect this in either. So we have a lot of work to do on this field. So this is the proposal. This proposal is coming from an institution that we call Pan Eka Fund, which is an American institution which works with farmers in Burundi, in East Africa, in many countries, but the proposal was on Burundi. And the interest here of Burundi, you know, in the classification of the EDH, what's the position of Burundi? What's the position of Burundi? It's the last country in terms of the EDH in the classification. In classification of EDH, Burundi is the last country of all. I don't know whether the statistics are right or not, but I'm not talking about that. But when you do the classification, the country less advanced in the developing the country in the world is Burundi. So from this point of view, it's quite important because it's a country who doesn't have access to the many of the GCF funds, and this ACA institution works on farmers in Burundi, and they are the one who brought this proposal. The proposal who has a target to reinforce the resilient solutions in favor of small farmers in Burundi. So this was a proposal which targeted 25 millions of dollars for GCF, and who was using co-funding of American philanthropists to the implementation of the project. So the model has been discussed a lot at the GCF. It's a model where it is completely a grant, where EcoFarm takes the resources of GCF and takes the resources of the philanthropists to buy a bulk inputs, agricultural inputs, and offer a package, technical package, a resilient technical package to the farmers. So it's a grant, but the technological package is given to the farmers against a resource. It's not given completely freely. Okay, the farmer has to pay something, a token. And in our discussion, one hackathon explains that it is a cost recovery because they don't get a benefit, but they charge them the cost of the availability of the package. So, and bring in the cost for the sustainability. So the money collected is put in the funds and recycled on a long period and increase the lifespan of this fund. So the GCF has brought 25 millions of the philanthropists would bring in $10 million, and 70% of these resources are used for the acquirement of these inputs, and 10 million is used for the capacity building. So that is the what is proposed to this grant of this project. So I think Kofi planned a video. It's Kofi who prepared the presentation. I'm just reading through. Kofi proposed a video for you to watch the presentation of the GCF.
Want to improve the agricultural sector, and despite their efforts to curb the environmental degradation and the climate change effects of the countries, their livelihoods are continuously affected, and their food insecurity is exacerbated. It's in this context that the GCF is partnering with One Acre Fund in scaling up an already proven model of supporting smallholder farmers build their resilience to climate change in a sustainable multi-year approach that would allow them to gradually graduate from subsistence agriculture. The project is important because it provides an integrated model of support to farmers who will be provided with options for management inputs, with targeted training, as well as solutions for diversified livelihoods. The project will also support the country in meeting its reforestation targets, given that Burundi's landscape is significantly affected by deforestation and land degradation, particularly exacerbated by flooding due to extreme rains. The project also represents the first PSAA initiative that the board has approved, providing a proof of concept for this new access modality, as well as demonstrating the more efficient, speedier access to these resources, especially from underserved countries like Burundi.
Donc,
So from my point of view, it's a very simple projects which in countries who have some different realities that are particular to countries, the context of countries. Because the GCF in its strategy for the period 2024-2027 continue to focalize on the domain of resort, targeting the food security, food security resilience, and for the agricultural sector. So just to show you some of the initiatives funded by the PSA and help you to identify priority projects, institutions capable, and we have the track record, decision track record, which had the track record of the project management, and to work together with these institutions to mobilize resources of the GCF. This is particularly important and urgent for all countries that are waiting to identify appoints and see the GCF approve an institution, accredited institution for the account on behalf of their country. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup, Sandra. Thank you so much, Sandra, for this interesting presentation, this approach. Thank you for attracting or drawing our attention on some aspects that have to contribute to this strategic approach that all our countries should do in their commitment with the Green Fund, the Climate Green Fund, and also with our partners, especially this aspect to be the first to have to start this, to have and to take advantage of these measures to simplify before so that before others start doing it. I think that there are a lot of questions, so I would like to ask all the participants who want to ask some questions or comment, and also ask Sandra to react before going to the next intervention from by our colleague Kofi. I can see Professor Isaac in the RC and our colleague Mr. Salad from Angola. The person, Mr. Delta, our NGL from Mali. So we start with the screen. Thank you so much, Mr. Moderator, Ms. Sandra, for this rich information. So it's very to this of that started since the first day. There's a lot of information, very important information. Congratulations. It's really useful for us. I will have a little precision. It's true that in this PSA, we can present one project that makes the difference with the standard one of application. One question is to know this project multi-country. Just my question.
Merci bien, Claudio.
Thank you, Claudio. Alex. Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Mr. Moderator, and thanks to my sister Sandra.
I'd like to listen to see. So, thank you.
For all this rich information. Question that concern is when we see the amount allocated to this project for this American entity, $25 million, whereas the criteria of PSA, if I understood very well, the entity should be LPA. When we look at the of our companies, it is not like that. It is not easy for them to do APO. So I would like to ask Madam Sandra if she has to give an advice to the MTAs, CRO or when we are to find the simplified. Is there another question or intervention? Additional one? Mr. Rodrigo from Burkina. Thank you, Madam Sandra, for the presentation. The question is regarding the number of projects that a country can submit at this window. For example, at the level of Burkina, we have two entities that wish to submit projects at the level of the window. Is it possible that the two entities can submit, and what can be the number of projects, the maximum number of projects that they can submit? And also that we are training an actor or AA to, for this one, the project will concern the improvement of capacity building of conservation spaces and the level of communities, and also to take advantage of the reinforcement of resilience and the community so that we can take into consideration that the space of conservation in Burkina. I would like to know what are the advice or recommendation regarding this option. by the PSA. So, any question? For information, for information, we observed for a long time in the private sector, whether in the mobilization, contribution to the climate finance approach. Associations, this is the civil society, the development of society, that work with cooperatives, activities, SMJ development approach, one that includes production, local production, that's impacting environment, for instance, fight against the deforestation, support those who go to employers, those source of establishment of a legal one, a legal. When you take an company, that a company is created by someone, an individual. Or when you take a sum, it is like a one or two people who create. That is a private company, which is for example, is it possible to identify them as digital actors regarding those funding? Thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Manuel. Just to ask Sandra. So we are going to move back to the country with a best practice of information. Can you start informing some of our students that are being accredited as a SMT or some other private actors that are. So you talked about this approach. We can take and present this opportunity regarding the motivation about this approach. I think that it's great flexibility and some companies that have never got this even fine. Thank you. Thank you, Sandra. Now, questions for the very question. The first question is PSA. Do you need to come to the country yet? I think that the second PSA should take a file by file. I think that is can be multiplied. And also from institution, I think MDM. So yes, it's possible to go for a PSA project. Operating decision was restated is a gap in the decision. Therefore, when for regarding the case of the second entity, not the second, there was a one that has been approved by the PSA that only received the PPS from the that was only exist for 6 months. And that created problems among some of us that we raised. And it is from there that the secretariat, the distinction does not remove the number. And that to evaluate the track record, we will focus on the founders track record. And so there is a session that we do not, we really want to have over there. But the secretary indicated that they have evaluated the track record found that companies found this track record. So once again, as I said, what is important is the track record to demonstrate it. An entity that has already received an accreditation. You can only do SAP if only you are part of the list of the accredited entities by the DCF that to sign and master accreditation. The PS2, even if it's the same amount, is open to entities that are not yet accredited for the climate fund. So we can choose between the SAP and PSC. These are destined to look at different categories, SAP for accredited entities and PSC for non-accredited entities. So they cannot be alternatives. The two of them are not the same alternative. The great difference is that whether accredited or not. So the question asked by Bokino is a very interesting question. Is something that the decision does not state. The decision limits the number of projects to entities. It means that this entity cannot give it a project. It is coming to a project to Burkina Faso. So this becomes a judgment. Is a judgment of a secretariat that we say states on a period of time it's considered to be appropriate and then the same country gets a profit of total judgment. Now, in case that we are judgment, I will invite the entity to be vocal, to speak up, because the decision does not stop it. If the two projects are great, the two entities are great, still that the GCF will ask you to prioritize. This is a demand that you understand that you have means to carry out what you have. You come to speak up, you insist on doing it, you engage the political, and you think that you have a great result. Because the policy, the decision, do not forget it. And we have partners, project partners approved by the GCF. This year's decision, and we should not do a course of application of the PSC, and especially when after the decision does not handle it. So it is also this also speakable, debatable to be. So it is a condition because the decision does not state it. So you ask 3 years of FMC, and if an entity has this year, it's a kind of a contradiction to me. But as the decision is down the question, it is to debate. So the persistence is not against the position, the condition of DCF, but the condition here, the problem has to be great as well as the entity. because in that if I don't know the entity or I don't know the capacity to satisfy to meet the requirements of the PSC, and for a cooperative association is the same answer. All entities are potentially eligible, but I will not be able to answer to this particular entity without I don't know. Or I don't know if it could into the evaluation system on the track record, also the project management track record. But the nature of for this institution is exactly the entity that the PSA is targeting. For those kind of entities and the decision would state that those kind of entities will be prioritized during the first year of the PSA. So that those entities will be able to evaluate the or meet the requirement. And so it's a question that we need to about from friend the entities that are already in the platform to have this information and not to wait or expect the accreditation not to send the project to GCF. Because I know the context of administration of Aston Martin would it has always done FM in the data and already with this one is the fiduciary aspect does by GCF. We also look at the policy aspects, but so my contact with the really part of PhD, why the way of agitation.
Coopération, leçon des clés de coopération. Merci.
Thank you. The question goes to my sister. I remember on the first day, one of the participants had requested for guideline manual. So I reinforce the guideline manual if we can include this important information, because with all these changes, so it will be important for the NDA focal point to have a guideline manual. This is my request. Thank you.
Well noted. Thank you very much, Arlette. So, merci encore. Comme vous voyez, le sujet est...
Thank you again. As you see, the subtopic is quite fascinating. Thank you, Sandra, for your practical advice as usual, and implications that this have for our countries and what they want to do. So we encourage everyone to take more advantage and seize these opportunities. I would like us to express our appreciation to Sandra by putting our hands together for her. Thank you. And as usual, she's available for private discussions, one-on-one discussions. We will now ask our colleague Kofi to help us. All right, well, how do you feel? How do you feel? Can we move on with another presentation, a discussion? Yeah, so, Kofi, we all agree on this. We prefer to continue with Kofi rather than coffee.
So Kofi will be taking us through a discussion on a strategic approach to accreditation. And voilà, nous sommes tout oui. Merci beaucoup, Kofi.
Once again, dear colleagues, the time the technical board will project the presentation to us, I would like to seize the opportunity to recall very fast the objective of this presentation, of this discussion on the strategic approaches in terms of accreditation. This presentation will help us to see what are this presentation will help us to see some key statistics in terms of entities that have been accredited and of data sense, regional and national. And this will help us to look at the framework of accreditation of GCF. In the education board, last time there's a reform that have been introduced in terms of process of accreditation. By an approach, and that will help countries that want to get accreditation of their institutions to be more strategic in the choice of the institutions that will be accredited.
See,
Thank you. Let's go to the next slide. The outline on which we are going to discuss. Next slides. We're going to start to have the overview of the accreditation from institutional point of view. If you look at it very well, we're going to see 6 key situations. And the situation is on the current situation of the accredited institutions in Africa. And right now, on the continent, talking about accredited entities of direct access, my focus may be regional or national or sub-regional. So on the continent, right now you have 27 accredited institutions, entities. I put in entities of Adaptation Fund as well as GCF. So the whole of this accredited insurance makes 27. In these, there are 3 that's specified to Adaptation Fund. And we have 15 which are specifically accredited to Green Fund for climate. We have 9 which are accredited to for Adaptation Fund and also that of climate. Yeah. So that is the mapping of the accredited institutions in Africa. So on the 27 entities that are accredited are classified in 18 countries. This is the mapping of the countries on the screen. So we also try to see what is the potential of the scope in terms of the covering of the projects of these entities. You know, GCF has 4 types of projects. Regarding the first level of projects, the macro, which are micro, $10 million of you have 5 entities. For the second level, which is the small level project between $10 and $50 million. Regarding the middle size 50 to 250, and the last one, the large one, we have 3 entities there, which are Tijari Wafa Bank, it's an institution based in Morocco, a bank based in Morocco, which was accredited last year. We have also the Marcel, which is also based in Morocco, and another bank which is in South Africa. So this is the mapping of the different accredited entities in Africa. And this gives us some idea of the capacity of mobilization of funding of these entities. That's why we wanted to show you the situation. We also want to remind you that among these entities in Africa, the accredited in Africa, there are 23 which are direct access entities of at the national level, and 4 that are the regional level. The 4 are Boyade, which is based in Togo. We have OSS, which has its headquarters in Tunisia. We have Ashijan Farm, which is in Morocco. And we have GBS, which is in South Africa. Oh. In addition to this mapping, we also want to try to see what is the portfolio or the pipeline of the institutions, the current institutions that are applying for the accreditation at the level of the GCF. So concerning this pipeline, we have 5 major institutions. The first institution is countries who don't have who are non-accredited and who are not in the pipeline. So these are countries who have never got close to the GCF to get their entities accredited. We have 13 countries. For some of these countries, you can understand Libya, for instance, Sudan, South Sudan, for instance, and Sudan, they are part of this list. You can understand the situation regarding this situation, the war